agents are approaching, these investors, what would you say are some qualities that they need to possess to really stand out? Because, everybody wants to work with somebody that's doing volume. What would you say is some qualities that they really need to bring to the table to really wow an investor?
So underwriting is a really big one. Yeah. And the ability to source deals has been the biggest. When I first really started getting into it, I didn't have a whole lot that I could provide aside from being their eyes and ears for deals. And so I did that by building relationships with wholesalers. I know wholesalers are really stigmatized in the industry, and you do have to be careful with who you work with, because not all wholesalers are created equally. But I will tell y'all that there are very ethical wholesalers out there that have a lot of opportunity for you and the people that you work with, or the investors that you work with. But that's kind of how I got my foot in the door. Is I would find off-market properties for these investors, and I wouldn't try to make any money on the front end. I wasn't worried about that. I wasn't trying to take any of their profit, slap any fees on top, which you can. And I know agents who do that. I'm not saying that that's the wrong thing to do, but I'm talking to you on the lens of new agent Patrick, who's just trying to get deals and bring them to investors and build up my clientele. And so I looked at that as, hey, that's a free listing 2 months from now, whenever they finish the reno. So I would look for these deals every time I saw an opportunity, whether I was scrolling on Facebook, saw one on Zillow. I'd say, hey, take a look at this. The numbers check out. You need to buy this. And then I just gave myself a listing, 3 months down the line. And so eventually you start doing that. And if you bring enough investors, enough deals, I mean, you can build up a pipeline pretty quickly.
So what does that process look like? Finding the off-market deals, because, some agents, they freeze up when you start talking about off market, man, because it's the Wild West. You don't really know, it's like the ocean. It's like for sale by owners. So what does it look like when you're talking about sourcing off market deals for you, at least?
Yeah. So a lot of y'all's markets will have local real estate investing groups. I would encourage y'all to go join all of them, as many as you can, so that you have maximum exposure. We know it's all an exposure game, making the social media video for your listing and getting the good photos and the aerial pictures and the 3D floor plan. Same concept. You need to expose yourself to as much as possible, whether it be through Facebook. Investor Lift is somewhat the Zillow of off-market properties. So Investor Lift is a good resource. And then most of y'all's markets are going to have a RIA, a Real Estate Investor Association. There's a lot of deals being exchanged, a lot of trading going on in these RIAs. Not only that, but that's where the investors are at who you could potentially be getting business from. And I like to go about it in a really respectful way. When I first started, I'd say, hey, listen, you're an investor. You probably have your own agent already. If I were to bring you a deal, I don't expect you to, I don't want to take any business away from your current relationship, but if I bring you a deal, would you be opposed to listing it with me? And so just getting into these rooms, there's a lot of opportunity. Like I said, the Facebook groups, a lot of trades happen in the Facebook groups and on Investor Lift. Those would be the three that I would say you could source the most deals from, unless you start actively sourcing deals yourself, which means you'd be direct to seller, but that's a completely different conversation.
That's a whole different beast. Driving for dollars, stuff like that.
Exactly.
Okay. So we've dived in a little bit about, how to find the investors and everything like that, but let's talk about it. So like when you're talking about terms like cap rate, cash on return, NOI, ROI, BRRRR, where do agents start when they want to get more info on these things? I know you mentioned like bigger pockets. Is there any other resources you feel, whether it be authors, speakers, podcasts, what would you say would be some good resources to kind of get your feet wet in these situations?
Yeah. So if you want a crash course on it, what I would suggest is go into Claude or ChatGPT. It can be as simple as this. Hey, give me a masterclass on the BRRRR strategy or the fix and flip strategy. Make sure you pull from credible resources when you give me this masterclass. If you want to expedite it, because I'm not going to say it was a quick journey for me. I was reading novels before I even got my real estate license. I was consuming the podcast, so I'd already somewhat pre-programmed my brain to understand a lot of these concepts. And unfortunately, I feel like they don't touch up enough on it in pre-license, and I think we all agree with that. It's kind of meh. But I turned my vehicle into a school essentially, and I've got a big old 600 video YouTube playlist that I can share of all the all the podcasts that I've listened to. But that's where I would start, as start getting into the habit of listening to the podcasts. You can read the books if you'd like to, but if you want a crash course on it, AI is going to be your best resource, in my opinion.
All right. So I'm saying, like everything, it seems nowadays, guys, it's more streamlined if you just ask Claude how to do it, or if you ask ChatGPT how to do it. All right. Okay. Sounds like a plan. All right. So I want to switch gears a little bit. I want to talk about you personally investing. All right. Let's talk to the agent that is saying, I want more out of real estate. I help people buy houses. I may already help some investors here and there. I see them do it. How do I do it? Because I'm not going to lie, we always talk about helping people buy and sell the biggest investment of their life. And now we're thinking about making big investments.
Yeah.
Several of them, multiple times a year. Okay. So walk me through, your first property. I want to hear how that went.
Yeah. So the first property was a partnership because I was scared. Right.
Okay.
I did not want to risk my own capital. I said, hey, for me at the time, that's a lot of money. Really, it's a lot of money for anybody. I don't want to run the gamut and have this first flip be a nightmare. So it was a fix and flip. It was a property that I found on Facebook. I was sent the property. I quickly ran the ARV, or after repair value, which is essentially just doing a CMA and seeing what renovated properties that are comps are selling for in the area. I looked at the asking price and I said, whoa, there's a pretty big spread here. I think this is a deal. Okay. So I contacted a contractor friend of mine, kind of pitched him on it. Hey, listen, I'm looking at this fix and flip. I've got hard money lined up. And for those of you who don't know what hard money is short-term, high-interest loans that are lent based on an asset, not a borrower. So it's the loans that most fix and flip investors are using to do fix and flips or BRRRRs. And so I called him up. I said, hey, listen, I've already got a pre-qualification with a hard money lender. If you'll go 50-50 with me on the finances, we can take this down together.
Wow. Okay.
And so we bought at 220. We put 30 into it. So we were all in at 250 and we sold at 330.
Oh, wow.
So it was a pretty good first flip. Not everything went according to plan. Things did go wrong, to be expected.
What would you say, like looking back on that first one, what was if you could go back and say, Patrick, watch out for this, what would it be on that first one?
Hiring out contractors instead of me and my buddy doing it ourselves.
Really?
I lost a lot of opportunity value by having my time and attention being at the flip. I was there physically doing the flip myself, thinking that I was saving all this money. Really, I was losing money because my time was better spent generating revenue as a realtor, as opposed to being there working on the fix and flip, because we may have spent another $10,000, $15,000 for a contractor markup, but I could have made that $10,000 to $15,000 selling homes in the meantime. So that was the biggest takeaway for me is, there's contractors for a reason. There's plumbers for a reason. There's electricians for a reason. Yeah. Let them do their job. I'm going to do my job. I haven't done another hands-on flip since.
You don't have to be a jack of all trades. I definitely understand that.
Correct.
All right. So you touched on something that I wanted to segue into, so I'm glad about that. Hard money financing. All right. That sounds like, to some realtors, like a mythical concept. Like, what do you mean that they're going to borrow money based on the deal and not the borrower? Also hard money, like, who are we getting this money from? Is it a person? Is it a company? Is it an asset group? What is hard money financing? Who are we talking to when we want to have these conversations? Is there established corporations that, we can just submit a deal box to and, they approve it, deny it? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah. So there are institutions that hard money is more institutional. And then you got private money. Okay. Private money is maybe an individual, an aunt that, maybe a friend that's a business owner that just exited his company and has some excess cash that they want to lend to you, which I won't touch too much on private money because that's a little bit more advanced. That's more when you've got a track record behind you and people trust you and say, hey, here's $250,000 at 10%. You can do whatever. Not everybody has access to stuff like that, but hard money is institutional. Typically it's a fund that's set up with private investors. They fill the fund and they lend it out at a certain percentage. They're guaranteeing these investors X amount, and then the difference between what they're paying their investors and what they pay you, the borrower, is their profit. On top of, points and et cetera that they charge. But yeah, hard money is short-term high interest loans, typically 6 to 12 month notes. And they lend you the money for purchase and rehab. So, each hard money lender is going to have different terms. The most common term that you're going to see is 90% of the purchase and 100% of the rehab. So if you're looking at somebody like Kiavi, Creative Financing Solutions, there's so many different ones that I could send to you, Caleb, if you wanted to push out. I'm sure you got some yourself. But yeah, so in a hypothetical scenario, we find a property at $200,000 ARV. We purchase for 100, or the asking price is 100. We've got a $50,000 rehab budget. You're going to have to put $10,000 down, pay closing costs, and then you have an interest-only payment every month. So they are, the interest on these loans are high, but you're also paying interest only, so it kind of offsets that scary sound of 10% interest, 11% interest.
100%. Now, let's switch really quickly into DSCR. Okay, how does DSCR loans fit into this situation?
Yeah, so there's a super popular strategy called the BRRRR strategy.
Right.
And it's different in a flip because the exits are different. Typically, your investors are going to get same thing, hard money loan. But when they finish the renovation, instead of selling, what they're going to do is a cash out refinance. And typically that's in the form of a DSCR.
Okay.
And what a DSCR is a debt service coverage ratio. Also another loan product where they're looking at the property's performance, not the borrower's performance. They're still going to take your credit score into consideration and reserves, but they're not looking at your income. They're not looking at your tax returns, all of that. Some of them will request tax returns, but the point is they're not looking at you as a borrower. And a good a good example of what a DSCR would be. Most lenders are looking for a 1.25 debt service coverage ratio, which simply means if the mortgage is $1,000, they want to see market rent at $1,250. Okay. That's a 1.25 debt service coverage ratio. And so that's industry standard is 1.25. You will find lenders who will flex that in one way or the other, but generally speaking, they're wanting to see a 1.25 debt service coverage ratio, which is really popular for fix and flip investors. But also, if y'all, in regards to working with long-term rental investors, it's my preferred product to recommend to long-term rental investors as opposed to the conventional loan. Because depending on the lender, once again, it's all lender dependent. A lot of times with the DSCR, you can get 15% down. And a lot of people think, hey, well, I want to do 20% down so I can cash flow more. But that extra 5% is a significant amount of capital and doesn't make that much of a difference in your monthly payment. It's something that I've observed as I've analyzed deals and looked over them. So yeah, really popular if you get an investor that's coming in and they're saying, hey, Krista, what loan product should I be using? Should I use conventional or DSCR? I always suggest DSCR, but let them look at both. Let them talk to the lender and let the lender provide the guidance. But it's important to be able to have these conversations and know how to navigate them.
100%. So what you've seen, because I know you said you've talked to tons of investors, you've done a lot of networking and things like that. What is like the main fault you see investors make? What is the main mistake, when they're starting out? And maybe you have a little bit of experience, maybe somebody, you got to say no names, but anything crazy that you kind of see, maybe they just were too cocky going into the situation. They thought it was gonna be a lot easier. Maybe they just didn't pick the right contractors. They got screwed over on estimates, way more expensive than it was supposed to be.
I've got two, and they're going to be kind of contrarian. So I need y'all to hold on with me. Okay. One is analysis paralysis. And this is for business owners in general. It's where you're thinking about this concept, you're dreaming about it, you're like, I'm going to execute on it, I'm going to do it, but then you freeze and you're like, oh, but what about this? And what about that? And what if this goes wrong? And what if that goes wrong? And then you never end up doing it. Right. That's one problem. The other problem is being too ambitious and jumping into a deal that could financially ruin you for a long time. I've seen it. I've seen investors jump into a deal, and typically I get the call after they've done it, and they're like, hey, I've got one right now where an investor bought a property for $300,000, put $100,000 into it, and we've got it listed for like $490. And once you factor in the mortgage that she's been paying, she's going to lose a lot of money. We didn't find out about it until after it was all said and done. But that's because she got too ambitious and she just jumped on the first thing she thought looked good without consulting somebody. And the community is so generous. You can contact somebody on Facebook or make a post. Hey, I'm looking to connect with maybe a more experienced investor. I've got some deals that I'm working and I want to get a second opinion, So yeah, I would say the two of those: never getting started and just staying on the sidelines for too long, but also being too ambitious. There is a happy median where you can be strategic and tactful about it.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are so many factors that go into it when you're actually like looking at a deal for what it is. What would you say are some of like maybe one or two, even three, like of the most important things that you're looking at when you're looking at deals?
Yeah, so I'll speak to this in means of fix and flips.
Yeah,
there's a lot of variables that we look at when we're in particular working with newer investors, because we're very meticulous when we work with brand new investors, because we want to cross our T's, dot our I's, and make sure they're making a safe investment.
right.
But area, number one, right?
Yeah.
We'll make sure the area is up to par. I do know investors who love Class C areas, and to each their own. Everybody has their own investing style and investing strategy.
Real quick, Class C. So is that dependent on just geographical or like, amenity wise, like what's near the area? Is there schools, shopping, things like that?
So this is how we categorize it. And a lot of times when I do an initial consultation with my investors, I break it down like this. A class, think your gated communities. For us, Kings Grant, your Grays Creek, etc.
Yeah.
B class, this is middle class America. This is where, you have your nurses, your blue collar workers. C class is where you maybe need to carry a weapon on you and be careful, right? So that's how we categorize, without, how we categorize them fairly. And where you place your capital. And each one's got its pros and cons, like C class. You can get properties very cheap for C class, and you're probably going to cash flow really well if you're looking at a long-term rental. But the trade-off is you're not going to get as much appreciation as B class and A class, and you have to worry a little bit more about tenant demographic. B class, typically you're getting a little bit of cash flow and a little bit of appreciation. We love B class. A class, usually higher price point properties. You're not going to cash flow any unless you're doing an alternative strategy like short-term, mid-term rental, or you're putting a lot of money down to even out that loan to value and make it cash flow long-term.
So each class makes you go into the strategy completely different. So I can understand that.
Correct.
Okay.
But we kind of segued off something that we were talking about.
We did. We were basically, someone remind us, because I definitely segued. There I do have my next question drummed up.
Okay.
I'll dive into that. So when you're helping with the investors and everything like that, what are some tools that are using? Because I know you were saying there's some tools to help you kind of analyze the deals. Like, let's give them the secret sauce about, maybe some programs, maybe anything you've potentially even built in Claude. What?
Sorry, I was reading Cody Smith's message. You said some investors like C class, et cetera. Yeah, we actually have a lot here in Fayetteville that love C class. But nonetheless, so I had a particular way about analyzing the deals for a long time. And I would go and do an email template, but obviously anything that you do repetitively needs to become a system. It makes your life easier. So I did build an Excel spreadsheet with the way that I analyze deals. But there are plenty of softwares available and deal analyzers that you can find. Bigger Pockets has one. As much as I love Bigger Pockets, I can say I'm not the biggest fan of their deal analyzers, but it will do it. It does work. But with the way that we do it, we get a little bit more intricate with the details. With fix and flips, with long-term rentals, short-term rentals, mid-term rentals, et cetera, rent by the room, house hacking, whatever the case is. But plenty of tools and resources online. Some of them cost money, some of them don't. Typically, I've paid for a few calculators that are like $25, maybe $50.
Right.
And they've all been worth it in my opinion. The what you gain in knowledge and the revenue that will generate is worth way more than $25. 100%. I spend $25 a day on energy drinks. So
yeah, I know that's right. All right. So in your opinion as well, like I know every market is secular, you know, every market's a little bit different, but just with their interest rate environment, with home sitting on the market a lot longer in most areas, and then, you know, with the ban of institutional investors and the larger cases, like, what do you see as the future of investing? You know, is it a good time for somebody to start? You know, would you say wait until things are a little bit more calm, you know, globally? What do you think in that aspect?
This is my opinion. Don't wait to buy real estate. Buy real estate and wait. That's my philosophy. These external factors we can't control. What we can control is how we analyze our deals and the deals we choose to take down. So just to give you a quick example, with a fix and flip, if you were to do a fix and flip, the rule of thumb is you want your purchase and your renovation to be at or less than 75% of fair market value or appraised value, right? Okay. So what that means is you have 25% equity. Why that's important is if the market were to eat shit, excuse my language, in 2008, I think the worst market that dropped was 38%. So if you've got this 25% equity position, and that's worst case scenario, I would recommend everybody look at the ReVenture app. The ReVenture app is what I use for market stats, and you can go pull up and see which markets got the worst hit in 2008. Fayetteville barely dropped, Caleb. It was like I think 11% at the most. But you've got that 25% safety net. So if the market does come down, you still have a strong equity position. So yeah. Regardless of what everything else going on, these macroeconomic factors that we can't control, what we can control is what we do and how we execute in our business and the deals that we buy. So I always suggest buying. And if the market does turn down, it's just like the stock market. You don't buy at the top. You buy when it's better, right? Because look at everybody who bought in 2008 when everybody was freaking out. I mean, I've sold properties for investors that they bought for $7,000 in 2008, and they, selling for $255. Yeah. So yeah, I'm a component of always buying. It's called dollar cost averaging in the stock market. Same concept.
Okay. And now this is a personal question, man, because I feel like every time I open up TikTok, man, I'm seeing these investor gurus and everything like that. I'm seeing these, these 19-year-old kids buying houses in the Midwest and stuff like that. Wouldn't it be super dangerous to really, source a property for yourself where you're not there consistently? You know what I'm saying? Obviously, you could build a team around it, but like, it doesn't seem feasible. It doesn't sound smart. Like, I understand, like, you could probably get some really cheap properties out in the Midwest. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? You could really cash flow them bad boys. But at the same time, like, a lot of the cases I'm seeing, these people are not local to those areas.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a lot of what we've done, especially when I was a Bigger Pockets affiliate. I'm not a Bigger Pockets affiliate right now. But when I was, that's what a lot of what we had was out-of-state investors coming in. And Bigger Pockets has a novel called not long-term real estate investing, long-distance real estate investing. And I read the novel, and that's exactly what it's all about. It's about building your core four, right? Your team, your agent, your property manager, your contractor. That's the bug that hell. Yeah.
Versus co-signing.
Yeah. So it's a great novel, and yes, you're right. It is very worrisome. Because you're buying this property that's out of state. You don't know these people, but we all have intuition, and you got to really call and screen, make sure you're working with a good team. Right. And that kind of lowers that's how you delegate the risk. Okay. But I've seen a lot of people get burned. I don't want to say that nobody gets burnt.
Because that's the scariest thing, right? You know what I'm saying? Like once again, going back to what I said in the beginning, like, we talk about it all the time, how we're helping people buy and sell the biggest investment of their life. And now we're talking about playing Monopoly.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You can go underwater really quick. So there is, you have to err on the side of caution when doing these deals. But once I've done a little myself, and nowhere on the level you have, Patrick, but like, once you really get an understanding of it, it is a massive opportunity, especially since we're having conversations with sellers already. Yeah. To be able to go into a listing consult and be able to have an option where, hey guys, if none of this else works, I personally have these options that I can help you do. You know what I'm saying? That's just more tools in the tool bag. So real quick, one thing I want to dive into before we get into a Q&A with everybody else is I do want to touch on the contractor portion, because I do hear most of the time that's where a lot of people get burnt on. Okay. Like, what does it look like sourcing a good contractor? What are some qualities you're kind of looking for? And then even more so, once you do get the contractor, like, how are we making these design choices? How are we, you know, really deciding, are we doing just the agreeable gray, or are we going all out like, you know, some investors like Naveed in our area? So like, how do you make the decision, you know, and how does it really come to fruition?
Yeah. Okay. So just like, you know, if y'all have a client that's buying out of state, what are you going to do? You're going to see if you can get them a referral. Same thing with contractors. If you're calling out of state, but similarly, just like I said earlier, you can go into a Facebook group. Who is a proven contractor who's got a track record of not running off with money? I've got a property listed right now where same thing. They met me after all of this took place, but a contractor ran off with 40 grand of their money. So number one, ask for a referral. Talk to somebody who has consistent experience with a contractor, vet them accordingly, right? Talk to multiple, get multiple bids. You know, if we're looking at a new market, we're always going to get 3 bids at least. 3 referrals, 3 bids. Kind of compare and contrast. But yeah, referrals is the number one way. And then as far as design goes, what we do when we're looking at a flip, at least, is when we look at these comps that have sold, we want to ensure we hit value. We don't want to miss value. So we try to get as close to the level of renovation as the comps, and we put our own spin on it. Naveed, the way that Naveed does it, Naveed, as a big investor in our area, is he has multiple different types of schematics that have been proven to sell. And so he'll choose one of the schematics to do for the flip.
And is that like those schematics, design choices, cabinet types, you know,
exactly
like that? Okay. So it's kind of like you basically create a resource to be able to give the contractor.
Yeah. And something we started doing more recently is I'll go into the MLS and I'll look at flips that flew off the market.
Yeah.
And I'll look and I'll say, okay, they did this differently. They did this gorgeous accent wall and they've got the 2 lights by the fireplace. And okay, we can just copy that. You know, we don't roll the dice too often and say, hey, we're going to do the, you know, something crazy. Yeah. We're going to paint all the cabinets black and do black countertops, even though I like that, etc. So yeah, we like to look at comps, and I do get on Pinterest a lot. I love Pinterest and draw some inspiration from there.
Okay, 100%. So when you're going through the design process, what do you often see be the most expensive item?
I'm sorry, say again. I was responding to vet homes.
Yeah, 100%. When you're going through the design process, what is usually the most expensive or the most variable item? Because, like, you know, you're sourcing different things, especially if you're trying to have this replicatable process. You know, sometimes there's going to be shortages, sometimes there's going to be delays. You know, what is usually the most like what item do you have to worry about the most when you're trying to source or you're trying to pick out?
I would say foundation, because the roof, you can count how many squares you've got, and you've got a, you know, you can calculate what you're going to spend on a roof. You've got a few different size HVAC systems that you can account for, ductwork if necessary. Same thing, price per square foot with flooring. Yeah. Some painters do like price per room, or, you know, you can do price per square foot with painting as well. So I would say like the crawl space / foundation is the biggest variable. We have crawl spaces here in North Carolina, a lot of crawl spaces. So, you know, maybe a lot of y'all are tuning in from places where that's not as common, but you can have floor joist issues, band joist, subflooring. That's usually the biggest variable expense. And a lot of times that's because it's hard to account for. Everything else you can kind of do an eye exam on and make a decision. Whereas the crawl space, we usually open up the door and we like look around, we're like, looks all right. And then 3 weeks later, it's like, oh God, we got to replace all the subflooring in the bathroom because we ripped up the flooring and it's all rotted.
Okay.
So yeah, that's the biggest variable expense as far as cost. Usually the roof is either the roof or the HVAC, depending on if we're doing duct work and the unit or just the unit.
Okay. Well, man, Patrick, I want to get into some Q&A. First and foremost, I do want to thank you for that presentation, man. That was some good knowledge. Guys, we are going to have this. This has definitely been recorded. We're going to throw this into YouTube. So make sure you go back, you listen to some of the nuggets that were dropped in here, because, you know, this could explode not only your net worth, but your sources of income.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have all of the tools in front of us being agents. We see where the deals are coming from. You know what I'm saying? We see the big investors in our market. You know, it's all about having those conversations. But guys, I want to talk to y'all. So y'all have heard this whole thing. Any questions that y'all have, you know, anything that's been making you hesitant to get into your first property, anything that's been making you hesitant to talk to your first investor, shoot any questions you have our way. I want to see them.
Yeah, and I just, while we're waiting for questions to roll in, I've got a presentation that I do a lot of times for the NC RIA. I go up to Raleigh and speak there. And just some of my favorite things about working with investors and how it's helped my business so much is lifetime value. I hit on that earlier. As just you can have one investor that brings you, 15 deals in a year. And so if you can just build up a Rolodex of a few of those, you know, it could do really well for you. Also, selling numbers, not homes, is a big one for me. I can just plug in numbers, send it to an investor, and they're not making decisions emotionally. They're making decisions logically. So it makes my life a lot easier. And then finally, relationships. You just build so many relationships with contractors, with property management. Like I helped a property management firm grow by a few units last year. And they cut me a check at the end of the year, and they'll kind of bend over backwards for me, and they'll charge less to my clients that come into them. So there's just so many different relationships that you can build, and it's just great. And I just love people. So
I know that's right. Krista has a question. Yes, ma'am.
Hey guys, quick question. Patrick, do you work with mostly residential properties, residential investors, or do you do commercial as well?
So we do commercial multifamily. I've tried to wrap my head around like industrial and warehouses before, and I realized until I go to like CCIM or SOAR or whatever, I'm probably not going to mess with it. I do like I am very familiar with syndication, which is where you raise capital to purchase, and I paid for a mastermind to learn more about it. More commercial multifamily, and I'm trying to learn more about self-storage. I really like the concept of self-storage.
Oh yeah, no, there's definitely money in self-storage, and especially guys, if y'all are in the military areas, you already know there's storage.
Yeah,
they're everywhere. I think vet homes.
No tenants.
Yeah, exactly right.
No plumbing or nothing.
And I'm saying, depending on, it's your total choice if you want to air condition it or not. Yeah. Vet homes. Did you happen to have a question by chance? Yeah, throw it our way. Yeah, talk to us. What's up? Oh, one second. Okay, she's coming back. There we go. Yes, ma'am.
So that book, was it called Long Distance Real Estate? Or
yeah,
was you telling me to go into the community of Bigger Pockets? Okay.
Yep, that's it. You can go to biggerpockets.com, and they have a tab just for their novels. Click there, and that's not the only one. They have a top producer series for realtors, and it is phenomenal. You know, that's for retail agents or investor agents, and that was one of the first series that I read, and it was very good.
Yeah, and if you want to access the actual podcast, guys, just go to your favorite podcasting app. You can use Spotify or you can use Apple Music. Yeah, it's both in there. And honestly, like Bigger Pockets has the real estate, and they have Bigger Pockets money. And that's a really good one as well, because that really will dive into, you know, tax strategies, you know, being able, like I just learned about HSAs, which is, you know, basically an account for your insurance. It's really crazy. It's really in depth, guys, you know, and the biggest thing I always been a proponent of is you don't know what you don't know. And, you know, being able to expose yourself to the right people and to the right resources, it'll change the way you think. You know, you're one conversation or one podcast, one book away from completely changing how you do everything.
Absolutely.
That's really the truth, guys. Before we get out of here, guys, once again, Patrick, thank you so much for your time, man. Absolute rock star. Thank you for dropping in, giving us some wisdom, kind of talking to everybody about your journey in the investment path, and kind of, you know, giving us some things to watch out for those who are ready to get into it. Guys, I do want to remind you, we are starting to do these every week now. Okay. Beforehand, we did them every other week. All right. We want to see your beautiful faces every week. Okay. Now, I know we're moving from Zoom. to Google Meet. Okay, it'll be Google Meet. It'll be in the invite. All you gotta do is click that link, and I'll see you there. Okay, guys. All right. Can I get some waving hands? Oh yeah. We're gonna have a great week. We're gonna sell some houses. Okay. I love to see it, guys. I love to see it. Y'all have a blessed week. All right. Reach out if you need anything at all. Pat, really quick, drop your Facebook or your Instagram or something in there in case people want to pick your brain a little bit more. I'm saying his name's pretty easy, Patrick White. You can look him up, but what's your at? Okay, boom, even better. Instagram is White House Investment Group. All right, Pat. Thank you again, guys. Have a blessed week. See you next time. Beautiful, beautiful. Thank y'all all for coming through. Let's see. I know I'm in the recording. Here we go.
Hey, Patrick. Hey, member, what's your name?
I'm Caleb. I am the new director of education for you guys. My name's Caleb White.
This is the first time I'm up in here. So
okay. Well, hopefully you keep coming back.